Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Rejuvi 45. If you are here today, or you are watching one of our recordings, or our demos, or our reels, you are here because you've heard this phrase called modern leadership, and you're interested, you're curious, and you're here to learn more. And you've joined the right place because this is the community for modern leadership. My name is Regina Hebb, and I am a principal and founder at Rejuvi. And today I am joined by
Mel McCarthy, principal and partner, also at Rejuvi.
Happy New Year, Mel.
Back at you, Reg. Looking forward to it.
I know it's gonna be a great year. And
Got it.
you know what? I think it's gonna be a great year because you have this brand new office,
Do.
and this brand new office is looking fantastic.
Thank you very much. I have enjoyed putting my own finishing touches on things and painting walls and hanging art and bringing some real live plants, especially to get me through this winter season. So it's just lovely having a dedicated space with a lot of natural light.
It's really beautiful. And I'm glad to christen it in a Rejuvi 45 session. So so we could talk a whole lot about your new office and that beautiful piece of artwork that you have behind you, but we are here today to do a session called For the Greater Good. And it's one of the coolest pictures that's associated with, it's got all these great little eggs. But the For the Greater Good is really about saying, how do you get yourself into this good egg situation with leadership analytics? And when we talk about leadership analytics, you're really at the end of the day talking about measurement and about knowing, you know? So can I tell you one of my most significant stories about measurement?
Love to hear it.
So many years ago, decades ago, actually, I dated this nice young man from the South Side of Chicago. His name was Antonio, and he was Italian. Now, I married the nice German boy from southern Minnesota, and have been married to him for more than 3 decades. But I digress. And Antonio was an engineer. And I had, and I don't specifically remember the type of engineer, but he was working for an organization, and a huge piece of his job was to create measurement methods for a number of things that felt squishy to me. And I'm like, well, how do you measure this? How do you measure that? And he would respond. And he made this comment, and he said, at the end of the day, Reg, I think that you can measure anything. And I'm like, no, you can't measure everything. And he said, tell me one thing that you think can be measured, and I'll talk you through it. And I said, how do you measure love? He started laughing. And he goes, I'm Italian. That's the easiest thing in the whole world. He said, if I was thinking about how you measure love, you would do it in the number of times that you tell someone how you feel about them. You would do it in the number of times that you pick up their dry cleaning on the way home from work because you know that they're busy. You would do it by the number of times that you hug and kiss them every single day. And I still remember that conversation with this great guy from the South Side of Chicago who was an engineer, because it influenced me heavily in the area of measurement. And that even with the squishiest, most lovely of things, there is a way to gain an understanding of how much do you have. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, 100%. There's so many things I think, in this field of developing people and developing organizations. And there's a lot of different tools and methodologies out there that we've tried, right? We've all tried our best to try to figure out How do we keep people engaged? There's an engagement survey, right? There might be scoring they do. It can be NPS, right? Trying to understand how our customers feel about us. And all a really good attempts, I think, to quantify some things. But one of the biggest challenges has been around how do you really assess how your leaders are doing on the interpersonal skills that are so needed to be a really good, kind, and humanistic leader, but also how do these leaders actually impact their business? How do they drive the right results for their area of responsibility? How do they make the right decisions or set the right direction? And that's been historically a lot tougher to get your arms around.
Yeah, well, I think you focused on two phrases that really are the theme of the conversation today, called for the greater good. How do you get yourself into a good egg situation where
Mhm.
you're able to know how much leadership capability do you actually have? And and how is it, and if it's changing, either contracting or expanding, what did that contraction or that expansion in it actually do to your business outcomes, right? So
Right.
we're gonna talk through that a little bit today. So now before we get there, I'm going to, because this is it's new to the world,
Right.
going about it this way, is this, that, and by the way, everyone, the phrase new to the world is something that Mel has taught me. She uses it a lot about Rejuvi and about
Mhm.
pieces, parts of Rejuvi. So thank you for that, Mel. But the way that we go about measurement in order to understand leadership, in order to represent leadership analytics and all that it means to get yourself in a good egg situation in your organization, is new to the world. And what I want to do right now is, just before we get into that, is talk just a little bit about, well, what was the old world, you know?
Mhm.
And so I'm going to have you just talk a little bit about that. It'll be a test for both of us. It'll be a test for both of us, but I'm
Sure.
gonna have you talk a little bit about it. Let me kind of tee you up. So, in when we think about measurement in the area of leadership or in the area of leadership development, I always say we've taken a product-based approach. We do something. For example, we rebuild our leadership onboarding process. We buy a coaching course and we deliver it to all of our leaders.
Mhm.
We um, we purchase an introduction to innovative leadership course. We roll it out to absolutely everyone, and then what we do is we try to understand, because we did that thing, because we rolled that thing out. Um, we want to know what its return on investment has been, like what happened. And there's been a gold standard in the past for how we have actually tried to answer that question. What can you tell me about the gold standard?
So in the past, yeah, when I ran a learning and leadership development team, we would often refer back to a model, it's the Kirkpatrick model, and it was a way for us to try to measure someone's experience and or the outputs of, what came out of, right, going through or consuming that product, that course. And so it'd start with like, well, did they like it? Sometimes you get really good feedback, right? Like this was great. This changed my mind about something. Sometimes it was, I want donuts instead of bagels. Not so helpful. Then it was like this next level, which was, well, let's test them on it. Let's make sure they actually like got the knowledge into their bones. They can kind of repeat it back out to us. They get it. That third level is, can they demonstrate they can take action on it? Can they do something with it? Right? Can they actually weave it into their new way of performing? And then the fourth level was, great. If you got all three of those things, how did that impact your business? Did it drive to any specific results? And
Mhm.
that sounds great. But the reality is for most learning and development or HR departments, their ability to actually measure at all those levels and then go into how do you quantify what they're out doing when they're back on the job, right? So then you start to rely back on, okay, well, let's look at like the kind of like for the outside in, well, how does this leader's engagement scores look? Or, the HR partner did a couple of interviews with people on the team and, things are going good this way. Oh, haven't seen a change here. Whatever the case may be. It wasn't a linear approach, which is good, but it wasn't a very scientific approach either, because the ability to do that doesn't really exist, or it didn't until Rejuvi came along. So that's one thing. And I'd say the other thing that we've seen tried is this idea of kind of a training impact map. So some practitioners inside organizations have said, listen, I know that, for example, we're trying to increase our sales by 15% this year. Well, for this particular work group, what does that mean for their jobs? Well, let's back that into what are some of the goals that they need to achieve? Well, what do they need to learn to be able to do that? What do they need to perform? And they try to map it like, well, let's get surgical right on these kinds of pieces of training, et cetera, so that they can deliver toward that really big new sales goal. That's probably, I'd say, like the best progress that I saw in that area. Still kind of tough to measure, but it was starting to get down at a more, how do I help these individuals get really good at hitting these key things for our organization?
Would you say that what you're describing for me is newer in thinking, but would you say was a little bit like almost like a procedural analysis, like when you use the phrase kind of
Yeah.
back ending, like
Right.
what the goal is, and so then you try to back end in like, well, what needs to happen in order for that
Yep.
to occur?
Yep. And I'd say it was still pretty still had a lot of like tunnel focus, right? Because again, right spirit, but it's saying like, okay, what are the knowledge, skills, and attitudes do they need, right, to be able to hit this goal? But it made it overly simplified, because you're saying that like this is the only thing this person does, right? And it's this A to Z type of a thing, and it doesn't take into account all of these other things happening outside of that individual in the enterprise, or if they need to work across other groups to get stuff done. Well, how do you measure how well they do that? Right? So how do you measure how leaders do that well? And so it was too one-dimensional. It was too focused on just the individual getting X results. Yes, for the greater good of the organization, but not necessarily, yeah, but we don't all work in a vacuum, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So that's where there
yeah,
was a gap.
yeah. So I I agree with everything that you're talking about. And one thing that I want to point out is, so regardless of whether or not you're using, the gold standard, which in the past has been Kirkpatrick's model, and there are 4 levels. I think sometimes people talk about it as 4 levels. Sometimes people talk about it as five levels.
Yep.
Um, um, there was this, I opened and asked you this question. Well, if the Kirkpatrick model, right? If whether it's that gold standard, or what did you call a training map, right? There
An
are ways,
impact map.
an impact map. There are
Yep.
ways that we've tried to understand measurement in the past. And okay, now I found my rhythm again. That you know, I use this phrase called a product-based approach to measurement. And it was about saying, okay, because we did this thing, because we rolled out this program, because we did this impact map, then, what's changing because of it? And so it's about the product, right? It's about the thing,
Right.
it's about what somebody's supposed to do, right? And that's a really important thing, I think, to point out, because even with the prior gold standard, people did get to do that level 4 type of stuff. So I'm going to hold an article here. It's called Measuring the Performance Impact of Human Resource Initiatives. Okay. And this is an article published in the Human Resource Planning Journal. I am one of the authors. And this is an output some of the old gold standard done really, really well. And so,
Mhm.
for example, what we were able to find, I kind of gotta get to the right page here, right? So for example, um, in this particular study, which was a 3-year study of about 12,000 different leaders in an organization, we found that if we gave them healthy, holistic 360 feedback, right? So we're making an investment in
Mhm.
an assessment tool. We're using we're using the 360 developmentally. We found that that practice actually decreased turnover by 4.8%. Pretty cool, right?
Amazing. Yeah.
So, and we found out a lot of other things. And so there's just all kinds of things about kind of what we learned. Now, what's interesting about that is, okay, that's really cool for the training department, for the global head of leadership development to know that if we
Mhm.
do this practice called, give people good feedback in a developmental way, in a
Mhm.
360 kind of way, it has an impact, a positive impact on turnover. So that's really good. But that's what I mean. It's a product-based approach. And I think the big thing that's starting to happen is in measurement and therefore leadership analytics is that
Mhm.
it is not about the product and what the product did to the people, what the product did to
Right.
the company.
Mhm.
As the new gold standard has the leader at the center. It has the organization at the center. And
Mhm.
leadership analytics, or what we say is getting yourself into a good egg situation with the new gold standard, means that the human being and the other living thing called the organization are now at the center of it. Because what we're doing now and have the capability to do is to say, let's take a look at, let's speak on behalf of like a leader first. You
Mhm.
now have the capability to get an understanding of of what their leadership capacity actually looks like. And if you can do it for one, you can do it for two, right? And if you can do it for two, you can do it for a team, you can do it for an entire function, you can do it for the
Mhm.
entire organization. And you can get a collective understanding of what does your leadership capability or capacity, I'll change those two words a lot, but how much of that do we have collectively? Do you know what I
Right.
mean? It's when I say the gold standard of the past was, took a product-based approach. We cared about things like, hey, I'm going to roll out this thing, and I want to know what the thing did to the leader. I want to know
Right.
what the thing did to the business. And the shift
Mhm.
is completely focused to the human and to the business. We want to now know with the new gold standard how much leadership capacity is there. And is it changing? Yes, it is. Okay, and what
Mhm.
did that change actually do to the outcomes that are important to the person, to the
Right.
team, to the actual individual? Do you know what I mean? It's a complete mental model shift from
Mhm.
product is not at the middle, at the center of
Right.
measurement for leadership analytics. The human and the business is at the center of measurement for leadership analytics. It's kind of fun.
It's fun, and let's just paint a picture for what we mean by that. So, what's different about Rejuvi and the modeling that we've done up front, right, is a leader can understand what does great look like. There's, right, something like 72 attributes that we have, that a leader can get a baseline kind of assessment on, right, from all the people around them that consume their leadership, their manager, their direct reports, right, partners that they work with across the organization. So it's still sort of that 360 input, because it's still a really healthy approach. But what it does is it gives them this idea of how they score against what a successful leader should look like, what they should, what other people should see frequently from them, right? What are those key behaviors or attributes people should see frequently that would indicate if you do these things, right? This is what an exceptional leader looks like on the human side. This is how an exceptional leader executes, makes great decisions, and gives great direction and gets great results for the business. And so that's what's different. What you're saying is, you know, we don't bring in this product and go ka-chunk, put everybody through it and hope for a great ending. It's let's see where you're at. Then let's use the resources that Rejuvi has within the platform to build and meet these leaders surgically on those areas where they want to move from red to green. And let's not just do it once. Let's do this in such a way that this just becomes the new way, that leaders are empowered to say, oh my gosh, this isn't about my personality. It's not about Joe over in this other department who nails me every 360 he gets, right? It's not about any of that. It's this idea of, wow, you mean if I just dial up these couple of other behaviors, or I need to really understand what this means to suspend judgment, for example, I actually going to start to move the needle for the company. My team is going to appreciate working with me more. And why do we know this? Reg, tell everybody how we got to this place and what a success profile is.
Well, that before I answer that question, I want to go upstream and reinforce a few things that you said, because I'm like, that is correct. And when you talk about starting with good measurement, starts with this really good understanding of what good looks like, starts to answer the question called why our starting place was actually different. And so I think that first of all, you can study great leaders, right? You can study great leaders, and you should study great leaders, and you should start to, in a valid and reliable way, start to know what are the parts and pieces of the things that they do that's kind of separate them from kind of typical average performance to really strong, leading the pack kind of performance. And so we've done that. Our database is more than 30 years old. And the models that we have built more recently start to answer the question called, what are the things that separate those that are performing at a high level from those that are performing at a more typical level? And that differential, the differential between the fantastic and the just okay, we know that up to 72% of that performance variance is because of these really cool things. We wrap them together and we call it a success profile. Now, what's unique about Rejuvi's success profile, because there are some companies out there doing really beautiful work with success profiles. The thing about those success profiles that exist is that they are one-dimensional. And so it's a success based on what are the things that are going to start adding up to excellence at the human level, right? That's for the leader. But what Rejuvi has done is we do a dimensional success profile. What are the things and all the synapses that are happening that separate the exceptional leader from the typical leader? That's one part of it. But the second part of it is, what are the practices that are occurring inside of that really well-run business? And we take those as well. So it's this multiple dimensional success profile that becomes our starting point. And I'm going to show a little picture here. And this is, I bring it up, there's some of the Rejuvi cards. But when you start taking a look at that double success profile that, we call it the dimensional model, there are pieces, that represent excellence at the human level. There are pieces that represent excellence at the business level. And all these little things are all the synapses of excellence that occur that separate great from okay. And
Mhm.
that's our starting place for understanding measurement more powerfully, that allows us to get into this good egg situation where the human and the business can be at the center of leadership, of measurement, and of leadership analytics.
100%. You know, that this was what was so powerfully attractive to me when I started trying to learn more about what Rejuvi was bringing to the world. And it was this idea that, and I'm sure plenty of leaders have been in this situation, you know, where you're in a new role, a new manager role, a new director role, a new vice president role, and you've got some experience under your belt on how to lead a team, how to, you know, how to bring out the best in people. That's great. But you maybe never have had experience on how do I do strategic planning? How do I think about competitive landscapes, right? For my business unit, my company, right? What's coming around the corner with this future that keeps flying ever more quickly at us?
Mhm.
And the idea that you can have a model that helps you with that inside part of who you are as a leader, and you know how you think about things, how you influence people, and how you get things done. But also this idea of like, wow, here's where I also need to spend time, and here are the couple of like these are the behaviors or the attributes I need to like watch and make sure I'm paying attention to, so that both of these things actually can equate to not only a great humanistic leader, but also getting the right results for the company to the point where we can tie them to KPIs, right? That hasn't been that lovely thread of all of that information just hasn't been available before.
Mhm.
That's what excites me so much about what we bring. And I think it 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 helps leaders be much more empowered to say, wow, these are the key things, not just for me to like have better interpersonal skills, but these are the couple of business practices I need to get smarter about, right? I need some help or coaching in, and then I can
Yeah.
watch move the needle. 6 months
Yeah.
from now, I can measure again and I can see how well I'm doing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that leaders get I agree that leaders get excited about two things. And one is, you know, I think that it goes back to the story about, can you measure love?
Mhm.
You know, but in order to measure love, you have to have some assumptions about, what it is. And so I think that leaders get thrilled because when they take a look at Rejuvi's modeling, modern leadership modeling, they go, well, why didn't someone just tell me this before?
Right?
Because it's understandable, like, oh, this is how I can be as a fantastic modern leader. Like, oh, that's how I can run a business that can grow itself into the future and sustain itself all the while. I think they
Mhm.
get thrilled because people aren't, coming at them with like one piece or part of leadership or one piece of or somebody else's experience and another part. It's like all this, no, here's how it all fits together. So I think that's the first thing that they fall in love with is, why didn't somebody just tell me that this is how to do it in a really beautiful, outstanding, modern, exceptional way? And then I think the second thing that they fall in love with is that we can give them an understanding of that holistic picture of where they're already doing just fine or
Mhm.
good, or where they're going to need to do some work. And they're like, thank you. Like, number one, I got the big picture, got it.
Yeah.
Number two, I know exactly how to feel good. And I know
Mhm.
exactly where to do better. Like, it just cuts
Right.
to the chase for them. I think they
Right.
fall in love with all that stuff.
Right. It just, right. It gets rid of all the noise, like you said.
Yeah.
Uh,
So let's just unpack for people. And we're going to do a quick demo. What the demo that you and I talked about was putting up just the overview of the Rejuvi Delta 6 pack, which kind of has a cool name. But as an example of the process of getting there. So when we talk about getting yourself into a good egg situation or the new gold standard of measurement for leadership analytics, it is starting with a more modern model. And that modern model has to represent both excellence at the human level and it has to represent excellence at the business level. Like it has to start there.
Mhm.
And then
Right,
you used this word earlier called attributes. And what we have to remember then is that those attributes, we have to control and understand and start to track those attributes over time and what's actually happening, right? If you don't do that, you're going to fall short of the new gold standard, which is leadership analytics, right? But you have to start with the better model and you have to start tracking what's happening with these synapses, right? That's what has to
right,
happen.
right.
Okay, so for everyday leader, what does that mean? That means that a couple of things. It means number one, you can get a real-time understanding of your current state on all these synapses.
Right.
Human excellence, business
Yeah.
excellence. Okay, what's my
Yeah.
real-time understanding? So you're going to have a point in time. And then because I believe all leaders want to get better. They want to do a good job, right?
Right.
They're just they want to do better. So they're going to do some stuff. They're going to find a way, right? They're going to use some Rejuvi resources. They're going to do different types of things in order to help them get better. And then they're going to go in and they're going to measure again, right? Because
Yes.
it's just like, okay, now there's another point in time measurement. Kind of how am I doing at
Mhm.
makes me good, what makes my business good, and what's happening to all of these indices and how are they changing, right?
Right.
That's step two. Now, what's interesting here, I think, is all of a sudden, again, remember the product is not in the center, not Rejuvi in the center. The
Mm-mm.
leader and his or her leadership capacity is in the center. And now we have these 2 point in time measurements. We have an X and we have a Y with some sort of time span in the middle, right? But we have an X and a Y. So now what we can start to do is to produce delta reporting. And so why don't you just talk just a little bit about, in essence, what delta reporting represents? And while you do that,
Mhm.
I'm gonna go into the platform, and I am going to show an example of this.
Absolutely. So when we use the term delta, we're really talking about the change that has occurred between X and Y, right? And so as leaders are running their baseline and they're getting the results back, they're going to see areas where, as you mentioned, they can feel really proud of where they're strong, right? It's acknowledging the areas that they're really, really good at. And it's also pointing out some areas that, maybe they want to go deeper on. They didn't know what they didn't know. They
Yeah.
want to learn and grow better. And so what this does is you run the baseline. Before we get to that why, it could be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months later. They're really focused on developing the skills in those areas and those priorities that are going to move the needle, right?
Mhm.
Whether that's on the interpersonal human side of leadership, or whether that's, wow, there's some things I want to look, I really want to understand from business practices. And so it's super powerful to be able to say, wow, I've hit that 6 month mark. I've been working really hard, right, at becoming an exceptional leader in these key areas. Let's see how I did. I'm going to send it's kind of this 360 approach back out again and see, where has my needle moved in the places I wanted it to? Has the needle moved backwards in some places that I want to make sure I watch? But
Mhm.
it really puts the leader in the driver's seat to own it, which, by the way, every HR department on the planet wants to see, right? Leaders be able to take more responsibility for their development. This is
Mhm.
a great way to do it. And the feedback we get from leaders who go through this, they love it. They can't wait to get more people on the list to give them
I
feedback,
know.
because
Yeah,
they're in the driver's seat for the first time. It's not getting done
yeah.
to
Yeah, I love the story that you're telling about that because we hear so much that people, have they associate data collection, assessments, 360s with performance problems,
Yeah.
and I agree that that is a perception that's out there that we need to acknowledge. However, when the assessment has been rebuilt towards modern leadership, when it has been rebuilt to show you how you're doing personally and how your business is doing in alignment with this modern dimensional model of exceptional leadership, people go, oh, well, I want some of that, right?
Right.
And they get really excited. And I think that our data is showing that people don't, there certainly are thresholds that you have to meet in order to run, a healthy, valid, reliable report. But people are going, you know, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times over threshold as a matter of practice because
Mhm.
they are in the driver's seat and they get to control how, who is actually sending the data in. And they get fired up about it. They have skin in the game and it's a healthy process and not a like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm scared of this, kind of process.
Right. Right. Really different experience.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so for while Mel was talking, I logged into the Rejuvi platform. And remember, folks, if you're logging in for the first time, you go to rejuviventure.com. There's a login in the upper right-hand corner. I'm logging in with Mel today as an administrator. Remember, when you go out here, that Rejuvi serves the modern leadership bench. And the modern leadership bench has senior people. That the platform has a piece for resources for those folks. The Modern Leadership Bench has sales leaders sitting on it that is represented by red. The Modern Leadership Bench has service leaders, purple. It also has team leaders, which is blue. And so it doesn't really matter what world we kind of get into. I'll just kind of stay in blue. But that's you going out here and it serves the Modern Leadership Bench, and you're just getting information and assessments and reporting and resources for, in this case, your supervisors and kind of team leaders. So if
Mhm.
I go into resources to go, this is where I'm getting resources to train, to know how to interpret an assessment report, to know how to run a Delta report. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to trusted partners, sorry, and I'm
Mhm.
going to click in Delta in the search and I'm going to find my way to something called the Rejuvi Lead Delta 6-pack overview. Now, remember, when you're logged into the platform, these resources, it's not called resources to go for nothing. It's resources not to go like I'm driving up to, a fast food place to get food to go. This is resources that are making you go, right? And so this is, you can download it. Once you download it, you can take it into your team meeting to start to do some immediate building of modern leadership capability, or if you want to preview it so you know what you're downloading beforehand, that's what I'm doing here. But this particular tool is called the Rejuvi Delta Reporting Overview. And I'm just going to quickly get to this place. And this is, Rejuvi calls this a 6-pack because it's 6 reports, 3 of them that are up across the top, a capability heat map, a capability heat map expanded, and a think to drive tour that are all about the pieces, all the synapses and how things are changing for the leader. It's this model right here, okay?
Mhm.
The bottom 3 reports are about the business, the build to sustain variability map, the build to sustain tour, and the team drivers report. And that is going to be working on the other half of the dimensional success profile, which is, kind of for the business. I guess I'm really tiny here, but I'm kind of holding up a
Yep.
little card to represent it and all that synapses. What's interesting about this particular report, and I'll just go into the build to sustain variability map, and it's going to give you some information here about what's actually included. It talks about the story that it's trying to tell, the primary metrics that are used, and then the modern leadership conversation that you can now have. And I kind of want to, I'll leave this up for just a moment. But what we're able to do, and in the real report that sits behind this, someone's build to sustain variability map at the delta level, it's actually going to tell you what your rate of change has been. Right. And so again, this is about the second half of the modern leadership model, which is this particular one. I'm holding it up in the little screen. You can actually see a copy of this in the bottom right-hand side of the big screen. What you're going to be able to do is to know what your rate of change has been. So for example, when your X that Mel was talking about, which is the first time you took a point in time measurement that you got really excited about, was this, and then your Y, you did some stuff, you did some training, you worked on yourself, and now you're doing a second point in time, which is your Y. The Delta report is going to tell you how the whole model in and of itself, or any part or piece, right down to each and every synapse, has changed. It's going to actually give you a rate of change for all parts and pieces, all attributes, and any combination thereof of how it's changed, is how it's grown. And it blows people's minds, right?
It not only blows people's minds, I think it blows senior leaders' minds when they imagine that this is something they could do for every single leader in their organization. And they have a dashboard to show, wow, right, over 6 months or over 12 months, this is what's becoming the credible rate of change across my leaders. This is the capability each individual has had and the change they made. And now look at the capacity we're starting to grow in our leaders,
That's
moving
right.
toward that exceptional leader at all levels, right? That's the dream.
That is the dream, and that is the good egg situation, right? The gold standard has changed, and it doesn't matter whose name is on what gold standard, right? We clearly have to acknowledge the work that Kirkpatrick had done in helping us to get to where we are and understanding healthy methods to measure the impact of, for example, leadership development efforts. But the good situation that you're talking about, Mel, is the fact that the product is no longer the center of measurement. The human, the leader, is at the center of the measurement. And there are now processes, tools, platforms like Rejuvi that can help you help a leader or help a team or help a business understand how or what is my credible rate of change in this thing called modern leadership. And when you can get that far by establishing a credible rate of change at the leader, the team, or the business level, you now also have, because of advanced analytic tools and because of other emerging technologies, the ability to take that credible rate of change of modern leadership, and you can correlate it and you can causate it to the credible rate of change of business outcomes that are important. So
Right.
I'm going to hold up this article one more time to show you, just to kind of summarize here, that we you can measure anything that you want to, right? Just like you can measure love. Antonio taught me all those years ago. And you can measure leadership. It's just that you're not going to measure leadership anymore like the way that we did, which was you bring in a thing, you build a program, and you're going to measure the efficacy of it. Just like, I helped this organization to do, where we found out, because we brought in healthy 360 processes, we found that our turnover decreased by, I think it was 4.6%. That's the old gold standard. The new gold standard is helping every leader, team, and business understand how their leadership capability is changing, to give them an answer to the question called, what is my credible rate of change as a leader, in an objective way? And when you do that, and you can then start to do that correlation to the outcome. So now what you're going to know is, because, for example, let's just take this as one example, because I, as a leader, I'm pointing right here because I just happen to know that a lot of these synapses that are right down here have to do with a leader's curiosity and all the behaviors that come with it. So you can have a curiosity index and you can say, because my curiosity index has changed this much, it actually improved our market share by Y. That's what we
Mm,
now have the ability to do.
right.
It's
It's
so
like magic.
awesome. It is like magic. And one of the things we need now is we need Vid here going, no, it's not woo-woo. It's, because he does this thing. He's so fantastic. It feels like magic because
Right,
we just haven't had that capability before.
right.
We do now. We
Yeah,
do now.
fantastic.
Yeah, Mel, I'm so thankful to be your partner. I'm so thankful that you are here with us today on Rejuvi 45. It's just always a blast to just not only talk to you about all of the things that are going on, but just to get your counsel and wisdom about how all the things that are going on help us to take us from the frustrations that we felt in the past to a
Mhm.
whole new way of working in the future.
It's a whole nother level. Thanks
A
for
whole
having
nother
me.
level. Yeah, thank you. Folks, thanks for joining in today. I think we're just a tiny bit running late today, but we appreciate that you're here. We appreciate that you're watching our full recordings, watching our demos, and watching our reels. We will be back next week, and we will be back with on January 18th, I think it is. Yeah, January 18th. And we will be back with a topic called the Big Roar, which will also continue a lot of the discussion that we're having really about the power of what leadership analytics really are and the power that really is available, the capability that's available to any leader, team, or business today. So that's what we'll be doing next week. Until then, thank you so much. We hope that your year is fantastic.
Absolutely. Happy New Year one more time.